Hi, I want to talk to you about sweeteners. I got a question, a good question from one of my viewers, and I wanted to share it with everybody just to make sure that people are more aware. So, first of all, please note some people have trouble with certain sweeteners. Most often, it's just that they overconsume and get diarrhea, and others because of intolerance to something that can usually be overcome through an elimination and reintroduction diet, but it's a tiny minority of people either way. The only sweetener for which this is an exception is sugar. Sugar is both poisonous and addictive, and it has a severe impact on the body in many, many different ways. It is by far the worst of the sweeteners that you can possibly consume. And that doesn't matter whether it's corn syrup or molasses or agave syrup or something else. Any of these natural sugars, including honey, have an overwhelmingly negative effect on the body unless you are consuming it very, very modestly. So, a few words that I want to introduce to you. First of all, is hypoglycemia. Hypo means low or below. Gly is referring to sugar, and semia means of the blood. So it's low blood sugar, hypoglycemia, which is actually what killed my wife before the stage 4 cancer could. This can make you feel weak, tired, and have trouble focusing and using your body. Hyperglycemia, which hyper is high, gly is sugar, and semia is in the blood, or maybe it's emia, I forget which. Anyways, high blood pressure, sugar. This can make you feel sleepy, depressed, irritable, and you can have trouble thinking and remembering. Glycemic index, or GI, how long it'll take the sugar in something to enter your bloodstream. The higher the number, the worse it is for you. Often, high GI means high glycemic load, or GL, too. But some foods that are high or medium GI can have a low GL. Anything with a high GI should be avoided, like maltodextrin, which can have a score of up to 150. Glycemic load, or GL, the amount of sugar in something. If it's all immediately available to be digested, or when it can be digested, how much sugar will enter your bloodstream. To calculate the GL, you take the GI times the carbohydrate content and divide by 100. Therefore, if you have a glycemic index of, let's see, we'll just use a radical example here. So you take the glycemic index, or GI, and it is, we'll say, 700. And then you multiply that by the number of, and I'm not, let me just put this on the screen for you. And you multiply that by, that's the wrong one. I want to have it on my calculator, not on that. Let me see if I can get it onto the calculator. There we go. Nope, that's not working either. Okay, well, I guess it's not going to cooperate with me here because it's not showing what I wanted to show me. Show you, that is. All right, we'll show you this anyways. So if you take that 700 GI and you multiply it by the carbohydrates, and let's say that there are like a Mountain Dew, about 75 carbohydrates in that product. So that's 700 times 75. That's 52,500. And then you divide it by 100. That gives you a total score of 525, which is pretty crazy. That means that you are consuming something that is really, really bad for your body. Now, these are made up numbers, although I'm pretty sure that some of the Mountain Dews are around 70, 75 in terms of carbs. But I'm not sure about the calories. I'm not sure about the glycemic index, but that's the carbs. Okay, so getting back to this then, starch is locked up sugar that has a lower GI because it has to be broken down before the sugar can be digested. Surgery. The GI and GL are not necessarily low once it gets to the sugar. Typically, it takes about 30 minutes to turn starch into sugar, although digestion-resistant starches can take longer or even be undigestible. To make a processed starch like pasta resistant, run it under cold water after cooking until it no longer has a slimy feel to it. To do the same for a whole produce like potatoes, you can cook it, bathe it in cold water, then repeatedly cook it and let it cool off. If the produce has had the skin removed, you'll probably feel the sliminess. Finally, and this is not particularly important, is more of just a little bit of education, gluconeogenesis. Glucose is referring again to sugar, just like gly or glyc, and then neo is new, and genesis is creation. So the creation of new sugars so that's the process by which proteins and fats can be turned into sugar as needed. Yes, you can take protein and fat, or just one of them, and make it become a type of sugar. It could be a fructose, it could be a glucose, most of the time. Most Americans eat way too much sugar, so this doesn't usually need to happen in your body. Now, if you're starving, your body might start doing that. Now, there's a lot of stuff out there about artificial sweeteners and sugar alcohols and just about any sweetener. Well, do you know where most of that is coming from? It's either coming from the company that used to have the patent for that artificial sweetener, or it's coming from the sugar industry. They don't want competition. They don't want you to stick with something that's going to cost less. They want you to be scared of anything other than sugar and the sweeteners that they have currently created under patent so they can maximize their profits, because that's how America works. It's all about the money, baby. And if you get sick in the meantime, they don't care, because that's more money. But that's a different video. So, the majority of artificial sweeteners are safe, again, for the vast majority of people. And the rumors about them that came out were likely from the companies that made them when the patent was about to expire. They needed a market ready to switch to their newest product that wouldn't continue to buy their old one from competitors, so they put out lies to make that happen. Yes, companies do that all the time. The most famous one is, or rather the disease, is phenylketonuria, or PKU, which is a genetic disorder involving the kidneys and is triggered by phenylalanine. Aspartame happens to contain that. If you and your family have no history of it, like billions of others, you're safe. This is the only one I'm familiar with that does more than diarrhea, although I've heard false accusations about sucralose, as well as about minorities of people who supposedly have legit problems with this or that sweetener. Equal and NutraSweet are the brand names for aspartame. There are other products that don't have aspartame in them, but have phenylalanine. Erythritol and mannitol. Less sweet, lower price, but because you use more to make it sweet enough, it's more expensive than you think. The cheap price of erythritol is why it's in most store-bought sweeteners, and they don't worry about it not being sweet enough because it makes you buy more, because you're using it faster. They falsely claim on the label that it's as sweet as sugar, but trust me, I've tested out several of them, and no, it's not as sweet as sugar. It's less sweet. Don't buy stuff. Don't buy stuff with maltodextrin or dextrin in it. Dextrin is a starch form of sugar and is still going to blast you with sugar once your body has broken it down. Maltodextrin is, as I said before, high glycemic index, or GI. It is usually 100 to 150 on the table, which is amongst the highest there are. Maltodextrin is therefore 2 to 4 times higher than sugars, which makes it horrible for diabetics and other people who have problems with sugar, except in trace amounts. Maltose is almost as bad as maltodextrin. Other sugar alcohols like sorbitol, maltitol, and xylitol are also fine unless you're diabetic or similar, because most of them will impact your blood sugar and or your liver. Compared to sugar, though, these are very low sugar and the impact will be small. So if you cannot get pure erythritol or mannitol using any of the other sugar alcohols, well, not any of them, but several of them should be fine. I have just tried trehalose, and it's mildly sweet, similar to erythritol. Allulose is often used too with other sweeteners, and sometimes it's sold in a syrup form. I haven't had allulose by itself, but trehalose is really very, very mild. I got it in a powdered form, or almost powdered. Um, I guess it's pretty close to like powdered sugar or confectioner sugar, but it's a little bit grainier than that. If you're looking for a cheap way to substitute sugar with something else, this is going to end up costing you a lot unless you want to adjust your tongue's sensitivity to sweetness. If you do that, well, you'll eventually discover that what you used to think was sweet enough is way, way too sweet. Sucralose in its pure form is both intensely sweet and bitter, but the sweetness is the primary flavor. Thus, if you use tiny amounts, you get a lot, I'm not kidding, of sweetness. For example, when I make coffee, I put in 1/40th, yes, you can see what I'm doing here, 40th of a teaspoon of pure sucralose in my mug, and it tastes sweet with no bitterness from it. I want you to understand how little that is. First of all, I have had this jar of sucralose, pure sucralose, not the stuff from sweets that's mixed with some other sweetener, for over a year now. I don't remember exactly how long. This spoon is 1/20th. Now, let me just put it next to my pinky there. It's 1/20th the size of a teaspoon. In fact, I'll grab a teaspoon. Okay, so here is a teaspoon. This is 1/20th, which is equivalent to 1 milliliter. And I'm using half of this. Half. 1/40th, so that's 0.5 milliliters. Yeah, it's a tiny amount. I can put that slightly less than 1/40th of a teaspoon of this sucralose into my mug of coffee, and that's good. So there are some allegations that sucralose can cause some problems. There was a study that came out, I believe in 2023, that claimed that sucralose was damaging something in the intestines. It was a one-off, it was poorly executed, and ultimately it was found to not be valid. So don't worry about it. Can sucralose cause a problem? Possibly. But the risk of sucralose or erythritol or any of these other ones I'm listing versus sugar it's like a mole of, when I say a mole, it's a very tiny measurement versus a mountain, or even just the animal, a mole versus a mountain. It's just ridiculous. You're getting tricked by the sugar industry into believing that sugar is less dangerous than these products that are actually less dangerous. Now, other options are stevia and luohan, which is monk fruit. They're excellent choices that come from plants, but have no impact on blood sugar or the kidneys. One review couple that I saw did a little blood test. It wasn't very scientific, but it gave the suggestion using their blood sugar tester. You know, you prick the thumb or finger, and then you test your blood to see how much sugar is in it. And what they saw was with the stevia, there was no change in the blood sugar. And with the luohan, there was actually a decrease a little bit in the blood sugar. So excellent choices as well. Erythritol and to a lesser degree mannitol, also sucralose, those are also known to not cause a spike in your blood sugar at all. When you go away from those, the other ones will have a small spike, nothing huge, but depending on how much trouble you're in medically, it could be a problem. So I hope this helps. And if there's something that's not clear, or maybe you've heard some rumor about some weird thing that happens with erythritol or something, ask me and I'll be happy to look into it further for you. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.